Well, hello, Village Heights. Thank you so much for being here. Before we get started, if you want to follow along with us, we actually use the Bible app. We have a digital bulletin. If you're from church, growing up, you heard them as bulletins. We do a digital one. So if you have the Bible app, if you're a super Christian and you have your Bible with you, you're shaming us all, but it's okay. But if you're not a super Christian, if you just have the Bible app, pull that out, go to the bottom, hit more, and then hit events, and then we'll pop up right there. And that's the scriptures that we have, and everything we're talking about today will be in there. All right, so today's exciting, and every Sunday in the past couple weeks have been exciting because we're talking about one of my favorite subjects, leadership. I love talking about leadership, so we're continuing our collection called Take the Lead. We're looking at key aspects, 3 of them specifically, that are important character attributes when it comes to a leader when leading in turbulent times. So the past 2 years have been challenging for all of us. I think we can all say that. It's been brutal for some financially, mentally, socially, and relationally. And we're all just picking up the pieces and doing the best we can. But many of us are not just responsible for ourselves. We're responsible to help folks around us along the process as well. If you're a parent, a manager, a business owner, an executive, a teacher, city or state official, people are looking to you for direction, inspiration, and mainly hope. Some of them can't see a light at the end of the tunnel, and they're needing you to show them where it's at or even what direction to walk. And I don't have to tell you that leading under normal conditions is tough. 2019 and before, if you were leading in that, it's already hard. But leading in times of uncertainty of what we're facing right now, it's not for the squeamish. It takes a bit of an iron stomach to get through it. And honestly, none of us were prepared for it, right? We don't always have the answers. We don't always know what to do. We're kind of making up as we go along, more so than we'd like to admit. And these uncertain times, the truth is, it's a permanent part of life. If you're not in certain times right now, you're going to be. Because circumstances change. And things that we thought were solid are not solid anymore. Things that we thought would never fail you are failing you. At some point, everything breaks down. And those are times where you find uncertainty. And to the point of our collection, uncertainty is why the world needs leaders. It's why your family, company, and city needs you. These 3 facets of leadership that we're going to be focusing on are always important, but in times like these, they are more important than ever. And so we started out this collection focusing on a timeless Old Testament truth when it comes to leaders and influencers, and that we were reminded from the story of Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar that leadership is a stewardship. It is temporary, and we are accountable for it. We are accountable. We are accountable for how we steward our influence. And last week, we explored how a leader exercises 2 forms of authority, 2 levels of it. First is positional, and that's the most apparent one. Positional authority, like a boss, a manager, a parent, a teacher. When you're driving along, you hear that whoop, 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 whoop behind you, the police officer, your blood pressure elevates because there's positional authority coming down on top of you. But if we lead ourselves well, we can also have moral authority. Not just positional authority, but moral authority. Moral authority is the alignment between what we say and what we actually do. It's the credibility we earn by walking our talk. Moral authority creates credibility. Credibility gives birth to trust. And trust is the currency of influence. If you don't have trust, you don't have anything to spend to have influence. You got to have that first. So, in times of turbulence, when dealing with the crashing waves of uncertainty in your life and other people's lives, influence is everything. Having the chance to speak into somebody's life. And so last week we learned moral authority is crucial to leading beyond our social context and our positional authority. And so today we're talking about number 2. Number 2, and this might be the most understandable and simplistic, and this is kind of how life goes sometimes, but it's probably the most challenging out of the three that we're going to face. And so the second facet that we're going to be looking at today is clarity. So if you're taking notes, now's the time to start taking notes, and physically in your Bible or in the Bible app, whatever it may be. So clarity is what we're looking at today. And so leadership is about taking people down a path, step by step, in hopes to lead them on a journey, to lead them somewhere beyond themselves. And the difficulty is that most of the time, we're leading people in situation and circumstances we've never been in before. Things that we've never faced, that we've never seen, especially in these times, right? Here's a few examples if you need some. Just so happen this might have happened, right? A pandemic combined with an economic shutdown that's left a lot of people in a tough place, all while navigating racial tension and social unrest. And also with a polarizing election in a siege on our capital. And now people are running to our country from their countries for their life because they're afraid of dying. And then there was freezes. Y'all remember the freeze? Y'all didn't know how many pipes you had in your house. You do know now. Freeze happened, hurricanes, multiple hurricanes, wildfires, and new COVID variants. COVID is having children. Like, what the heck? Why is this happening? And that's just to name a few. There's even more than that, I'm sure. Have you ever lived through something like this? No? Me either. It's all new. So like you, it's my first time to take the lead in these circumstances. Like you, I feel responsible for leading my family through this. Like those of you responsible for an organization or a team, I feel the responsibility to lead them, to lead our organization, to lead our teams. And honestly, I feel the responsibility for providing leadership for all of you and everybody in your contact list in your phone right now. Because how I lead you affects how you lead them. And it just so happened that you convince them to come here on a Sunday, right? And then I get to directly lead them. I feel that pressure. And I know that you do too. Unfortunately, there are not any maps or instructions. We're on our own, but we're not alone. There are people looking to us for direction and assurance. This is the tension every leader feels with every house provider that lost their job and they don't know what to do next. How do they lead through these uncertain times? Every parent who finds themselves parenting alone has felt this. Every small business owner trying to keep the business afloat has felt this. Every manager who senses all eyes are on her or him when he or she walks into the room, walks through the door of the business that morning, or logs into the Zoom call. Everybody's watching, probably being recorded. And if you're an intuitive leader, you know intuitively that what people want most from you, what they're following, what they hope most for, you can't provide. That's certainty. That is something you cannot bring. People crave certainty. They thirst for it. When politicians are running for office, their speeches are filled with certainty. They're like, if you vote for me, I promise this, and this. And I guarantee this, and this. And what happens is that every politician ends up over-promising things that they can't deliver on just to get elected. And so then they are, because they've undelivered, we're in a place where we don't know what to do anymore. And even though they've undelivered, we're stuck with them. They've got a term to fulfill because we put them there. And besides, if you confront them about it, it's always somebody else's fault, right? It's not my problem. That was the previous. Or they did this other party. Oh, they did it. It's always somebody else's fault. They never own it. Fortunately for you, you aren't running for anything, hopefully. But if you are, great. Let me know. I'd love to support however I can. But don't give into the temptation of promising certainty. You cannot deliver on it. You'll just disappoint people. You can't provide it because certainty exists in a realm you have no control over, the future. You have no idea what's next. You might have a guess, An educated guess, a logical deduction of what's going to happen next, maybe. But truth is, you don't really know. Nobody saw what we're going through coming. Nobody saw that. But if you promise it and don't provide it, you'll lose things like a domino effect. This is what will happen if you're in a place of influence. First, you'll lose your credibility. Then, once you lose that, you'll lose their trust. And then ultimately, you'll lose their influence and your opportunity to speak into their life. That's what will happen if you give certainty when you shouldn't. And so this leads us to the direction of today. While you can't provide certainty, you must provide clarity. When you can't give certainty, you must provide clarity. You can be uncertain, but you can't be unclear. And our responsibility is to be clear even when we're not certain. Clarity is honest and clarity is enough. Clarity in any situation communicates leadership. It always does. Clarity in the midst of uncertainty creates its own momentum. When you feel like it's too uncertain to do anything about it, it will create its own opportunities. The clearest picture of the future and clearest instruction will always appoint leadership. That's why when you watch reality TV shows or you watch a movie and there's something bad has happened, right? They're on an island, they get stranded, whatever. The person that stands up and it can speak the most clearly of the situation and give instructions always ends up being the leader. And it's not until later on they realize that person had no idea what they were talking about and it has led you astray now. But because they were clear, they had confidence in what they were saying. Because clarity is perceived as leadership. So during times of uncertainty, positional leadership titles and tenure don't really amount to much. You might have a boss at your office, but if a tornado is coming toward your building, you don't really care what that boss has to say anymore. You're looking for the people that can actually help you, the people that kind of know what they're talking about, because it will run out. People crave certainty, but in times of disruption and uncertainty, clarity is the next best thing to certainty. Clarity always wins the day. Always. Clarity addresses uncertainty. It doesn't remove it. You can't remove it, but clarity is your next best thing for equipping others in navigating their crashing waves of uncertainty. This is what happened. Clarity says, I don't know what the future holds, but this is what we're going to do now in the meantime. Clarity says, I don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to prepare for whatever happens. Clarity says, here's the plan for now, and we'll adjust the plan as circumstances demand. That's like every action group that we've ever done, right? Uncertainty is not your enemy. That's an important thing to remember, because in life, anything that's negative towards us, we want to villainize, right? We want to give it an identity. We want to give it this thing that's like, ooh, this evil thing, I need to get rid of this, right? Uncertainty, some of the bad things are really motivators to do something, right? It's that thing that's like, okay, you're uncertain right now. You need to start moving towards clarity because you don't know what you're going to do next. And it's probably going to be chaos. So it's a motivator. It's your opportunity. It's our opportunity to take the lead. And for some of you, clarity will establish you as the leader. So be clear even when you're not certain, which probably means that's more often than you'd like to admit. And if you're a person that's like, I don't know when my chances are to lead. I feel God pushing me to be a leader. And I don't know where that is. Wait for the moment when you're in a group of people and uncertainty is running rampant. In that moment, bring clarity to the situation and begin to watch your leadership bloom. Watch, because I guarantee you they'll begin to turn to you. So a great example of this is in the book of Joshua. Joshua followed Moses as a leader of the ancient Hebrew people. The nation of Israel began as a landless and lawless nation. They were a nation enslaved by Pharaoh, but God loved them. And so because of that, God raised up Moses to face the Pharaoh, and Moses told him to let my people go. And then a lot of things happened in between. I'm kind of really shortening the story. But a lot of terrible things happened. And it got to the point where Pharaoh was like, please go. Get out of here. Just go, okay? And so Moses led the people south to Mount Sinai. where God gave them their law, the Ten Commandments. Then they went north to the border of the land God had promised them. That's what we call the promised land, because it was literally God said, this is yours. I promise this to you. But when they arrived, they hesitated. When they finally got to the land that God has given them to occupy, they hesitated and they lost faith. They sent some scouts to find out what was going on there, and it got reported back that there's giants there. There is a people there that will probably overtake us. And so because of their fear, they begin to lose their nerve in regards to the uncertainty of how it's going to happen. And so because of that, the next 40 years, like they got to the promised land, the next 40 years, Moses was forced to lead them around the desert. And after most of the generation of the original that exited Egypt had died, Moses again leads the people back to the Jordan River, to the border between no man's land and their promised land. And so by this time, when they finally got back around, after 40 years of wandering, Moses is old. He's an old man. And the time had come for him to relinquish his role as the point leader for God's people. And as the nation prepares to cross the Jordan River, Moses hands over his leadership title to Joshua. And can you imagine that? You've been following this guy around for 40 years. He did this amazing thing and stood up against Pharaoh on God's behalf, and all this really cool stuff happened. And you're following, and then it's like, okay, your turn. And he goes to hand it over. Can you imagine the intimidation? And here's the thing. The problem was that the leadership environment had changed dramatically. Moses had mentored and trained Joshua in the art of wandering. That's what he knew. So every lesson Moses taught Joshua was related to successful wandering. Wandering 101, following the cloud, wandering 201, proper manna etiquette, wandering 301, snake bite remedies, blister care, all of these things, how to get dirt out of your eye, that kind of stuff. But when it was his turn to take over, the days of wandering were over. This was a new day with a new leadership context, transitioning from wandering to warring, from wandering around to settling down. He was responsible for an entire nation with thousands of families. Talk about uncertainty. No wonder the Lord spoke these words to Joshua. And this we're going to pick up in Joshua 1:9. It says, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Can you really command that? Can you do that? Apparently you can. Apparently you can do that. And apparently that's what God is probably telling some of you. The implications are to behave courageously and lead courageously. That's what he's saying. Continue on in verse 9. It says, do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Joshua probably thought, easier said than done, Lord. You ever been in that situation where you've lost a job or lost an opportunity or it's a big deal and God's like, don't worry about it. And you're like, oh, it's easy for you to say, God. You know the future. I don't. That's what Joshua is feeling. And the reason God told Joshua not to be discouraged was because he was discouraged. He was. I love the fact that God told Joshua to not be afraid because it's proof that Joshua, the big brave leader, was afraid. And that was okay. Of course he was. This was a new territory, literally and figuratively. Joshua had never done this before, and he never knew anybody that did. Everything about the situation reeked of uncertainty. But the Lord wasn't finished. And the next part would be repeated centuries later. We would hear it again in the early century followers of Jesus. And apparently in the 21st century followers as well. That's us. It changes everything. Changes his situation. This is what it said, verse 9. Continue on. It says, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Wherever you go. There wasn't a caveat. It wasn't up until the river. Wherever you go, he will be with you. He already was with you. And wherever you go next, He's going to be with you. So the basis of Joshua's courage was not on his ability to predict the future. And you're not built for that either. You don't have the magic 8-ball that works. Nobody does. Basis of his courage and his leadership was literally the presence of God. That's what made it for him. And what happened next is so instructive and relevant to us. And here's what Joshua did. So Joshua ordered the officers of the people. And so before I say what it was, let me first reveal what he didn't do, right? So, and this is really important to how this played out, and really the thing that we need to model. He doesn't say, now that I'm in charge, there's nothing to worry about. He didn't say that. He didn't say, or rest assured, everything's going to be fine. He didn't say that either. He didn't promise anything. He didn't predict their future. He didn't give them what they wanted. He knew better. He couldn't provide certainty, so he provided the next best thing, clarity. He gave them clarity of the situation. And then he gave them something to do immediately. Immediately. And so this is what happened. So Joshua ordered the officers of the people, go through the camp and tell the people, get your provisions ready. Next, he drew his attention to the next thing to do. He didn't wait. He didn't say, get provisions ready and then stop, right? So get provisions ready. 3 days from now, you will cross the Jordan River here. He didn't say might. He didn't say, if you feel like it. He said, get your provisions ready. We're crossing in 3 days. That's happening. To go in and take possession of the land the Lord your God is giving you for your own. It doesn't get any clearer than that. Collect your stuff, pack some lunches. In 3 days, we're crossing the Jordan River. And if you're a parent, you kind of know that feeling. It's like when your kids, but what's going to happen when we get there? I don't know. Just get in the car. We're going. And that's what Joshua told them. He says, I don't know what's going to happen, but we're going. Get in the car. Get whatever, you get your hat, whatever you got to get in the car. It's happening. So, of course, they must have been thinking, wait, how are we going to get all these people across the river? Once we're over there, what are we going to do? How are we supposed to possess this land? Our parents said there was giants in the land. They're like, wait, there's problems. And this happens to everybody, right? If you're a leader, immediately people are going to go, but you didn't, what about this? What about that? These things that they're afraid of, these things that are making them feel uncertain about the next steps. To which Joshua probably have replied, I don't know. Pack your stuff. In 3 days, we're crossing this river. At any time, I don't know. Israel, get in the car. We're going. I don't know what's going to happen next. Pack your stuff. Let's go. It was clarity in the face of uncertainty. Everybody knew their assignment. Everybody knew the time frame. Everybody knew what to do next, but nobody knew exactly what was going to happen after, not even Joshua. It was like driving on a deserted road at night with the headlights on. You have no idea what's next, but you won't know until you keep driving. You ever driven in the fog and use your fog lights and you only see like 15 feet? You have no clue what's next or what's coming or what's going to be in front of you. The only way you know, you keep driving. You just keep going. That's the only way. That's your job. That's my job. That's leadership, is just to keep moving, keep people going. During times of turbulence, clarity is more important than ever, because if you are unable or unwilling to be clear, you will most likely be a part of the problem rather than the solution. Lack of clarity leads to spreading uncertainty. Uncertainty can be like a cancer, right? And if you just I don't want to address it, I don't want to say anything about it, it's just going to go away. It doesn't go away, because all it does, it just keeps growing. Until you shine light on it and you bring clarity to the situation, it's not going to stop. So you can't just ignore it in hoping, they'll finally just trust, or it'll finally just work itself out, when you know it won't. You got to bring clarity. In times of disruption, people need to know somebody has a plan. It doesn't even always have to be the best plan, just a plan. And if that somebody is you, give them something to do now. Give them something to do next. Don't pretend to know more than you do. When people are looking to us for hope, it's always tempting to pretend we know more than we really do. That is always a mistake. Always. Don't pretend. You're not a leader because you know everything. Being all-knowing is not a prereq to be in leadership, although it would be handy sometimes, right? And what happens when you do that, you pretend to know or you try to avoid, it just breeds it more. So clarity is being honest and hopeful. You can be honest about what you don't know and clear at the same time. Sharp people around you will know when you're faking. The fake it till you make it model only works for a shorter period of time, right? If you put something in your resume and you got the job, you better learn it quick. Whatever it was, whatever you put in there to get that job that you don't really know, learn it quick because they're expecting something. You can't just keep faking it. It might get you through a moment, but it won't last. Pretending to know more than you do might help you succeed in a moment or two, but it will run out. The truth is, pretending erodes credibility quicker than admitting you don't know. Uncertainty exposes a lack of knowledge, but pretending exposes a lack of character. Because that shows that you care about yourself more than you care about them. Pretending to know when you don't know is a huge flashing sign of insecurity. Huge. Huge, huge. Saying I don't know when you don't know is good leadership. And believe it or not, if you admit more that you don't know, you actually will gain followers because they will latch on to your honesty. And they'll go, man, if they're honest about themselves, I can trust them. And remember, trust is the currency of influence. So when you express your lack of certainty, you give the people around you permission to do the same thing. Your honesty gives others freedom to admit they don't have it all together either. You send them an important message in this family or an organization. It's okay not to know. It's not okay to pretend to know. So be honest and hopeful, realistic and reassuring, candid and clear. I make sure to put this into my own vernacular. So if you come to me, and if it's a Bible question, you're like, guys, it's a big book. The Bible is a big book, and I already have a problem remembering things. I've already forgot most of your names. Don't be offended. It's not your fault. It's my fault. Maybe a psychologist can help me figure out why that's a thing. But when you come to me and say, well, the Bible says this, and I'm like, oh, cool. I don't know, but I will find out, right? It's okay to say, I don't know, but I will find out. That means that I don't have it all together, but I'm willing to go through the process to figure it out to help you. It's not that I don't want to, I do. I will follow a leader who doesn't know, but is committed to finding out. I hesitate to follow somebody that pretends to know. So acknowledge the uncertainty and then point to the future with confidence. Say things like, I don't know right now, but I'm confident we can figure this out together. We've never faced anything like this before, but with God's help and our abilities, I'm not worried. That is regularly said in action groups. When somebody comes up to me in action groups, I might have a belt or tools around me, and it looks like I know what I'm talking about, but I'm learning just like you guys. Like a lot of things that I've never encountered before. And I'll say, I don't know, but I know somebody that probably does, and I will find out. Make that a part of your vernacular. Hannah and I, and this is very revealing, this happens, it honestly happens to us, because we work in the same place, same office, and our desks face each other, and so there's moments where, we hit a lull. We get disappointed. We have goals for Village Heights, goals for ourselves, goals for our leadership, for our family. And sometimes when those goals don't get met, we feel inadequate. Or we feel like it's not going to happen, specifically in the realm of a building. And so Hannah and I will regularly say to each other, I don't know when Village Heights will have a place to call home, but in the meantime, here's some things we can do. Because if it hinged on a building, if you're like, it can't go any further unless there's a building, it would have been dead in the water a long time ago. But luckily, there's things to do. And having clarity about that is saying, it would be better if we had this, but doesn't mean it has to stop us. Clarity. Our role as leaders is to do all we can to ensure that the people around us and those following us don't lose hope and don't despair, while at the same time refusing to pull any punches as it relates to the reality of the situation. We have to face brutal facts, and that is hard. It's difficult. I get that. I've been there. But if you're all sunshines and candy canes and roses and horseshoes and dance around the brutal facts, you set people up for disappointment. And I've learned this lesson the hard way because I'm an Enneagram 7, and that means that I like to have fun. I like to party, and I don't like to deal with the bad stuff, right? Sometimes I will avoid it, and that's my gut reaction. It's not right, but that's what I'll do. When I wake up in the morning, I'm not saying, what are my problems? I'm saying, hey, what's fun? Let's do something fun today, right? That's just me. And so I've learned the hard way that in my own life, when there's something difficult, I'm like, ooh, that's ugly. Let's not look at that. Like, let's do more fun things, right? And I'll keep going. What I've done is I've acted like this doesn't exist or it's insignificant. And because it does exist and it's not insignificant, it is affecting people's lives, because I've ignored it, I've let that uncertainty grow now into something worse. When all I had to do was to say, yeah, that's terrible, but there's also other things. There's things that we can do. On the other hand, if you bury people under the facts, stats, forecasts, and the woe is me attitude, you leave them with no other option but despair. If you only focus on the bad stuff, and this is in our own lives, and a lot of you, this is what you call spiraling, right? If you only focus on this stuff, and then you come to them as their leader and you say, yeah, this stuff is terrible. Man, did you see this? Did you see that? And that's all you do. You make them think that is their whole life. And there is no hope. That's what you make them think, right? But if you're willing to stay standing when the things that are hard and you offer hope rooted in reality, you're giving a space for God to do something. This is what happens. Yeah, this stuff sucks. I'm not going to lie. It's really hard. But in clarity, did you know that this is possible? That you know that this happened for somebody? God did this thing for somebody in Scripture, and He can do the same thing for you. This could actually be your future. Yes, this is hard, but you can also be over here. But you can't stay here. You got to do something about it, and you're going to walk them through that process. And that's clarity. That's saying you're not the means of your destruction. You are the means of what God has given you, the love that He's put inside of you, and you can move over to something great. That's clarity. But someone's got to paint that picture, because it's so easy to get locked into this thing. So easy to do that, to get buried down by the facts. To face the brutal facts is hard, but then give somebody to do. Say, yeah, that's tough, but here's a next step. Here is something you can do. Be clear even when you're not certain. And one more thing, never be too proud. Never let your pride get in the way to seek counsel. Seek counsel. Leadership is not about making decisions on your own. It's about owning decisions once you make them. Even the decisions that you didn't make. If you want to be a upper echelon leader, it's taking ownership of the stuff that you didn't even do. Yeah. Taking ownership and continue on. But if you don't ask what to do, you won't know. In uncertain times, we don't know, so we ask. Before planting Village Heights, I had no idea how to go about it. No idea. We knew the fundamentals of church planting. We had done it before. And so what you do before you plant a church, you go see the gurus. You go to these boot camps and these seminars and all these things. And this is the newest hip thing that we're doing for church planting, and it's working, right? And so Hannah and I were like, let's go. God's called us to this area. Then we have no idea how to do anything. Because if we took a church from Magnolia, that design, and try to put it in the Heights, it won't work. It won't happen. And so we went to the boot camp, and I am not joking. This is literally how it went down. We're in this boot camp, talking to the gurus, the all-knowing church planters, right? And we're asking them, say, oh, where are you planting? Oh, we're in the Heights, and this is a part of the city, and this is what it looks like. And they say, oh, man, great. We have no idea how to tell you to do that. I'm not joking. They literally told us, we have no idea. Nobody has done it before. Has been successful at it, at least. We know a lot of probably what not to do. We've seen it, people try and it didn't work out. But honestly, we're watching you and we're kind of hoping you figure it out so we know what to say. That is truthfully what they said. That could have been very defeating, but that was actually the best kind of advice we could have received. That was the best thing they could have said. It was the moment, and rather than pretending and making something up. Because it didn't take away our uncertainty, but it did give us clarity in how to proceed. Basically, we knew do something different. Because if what worked had already been done, there would be no need, right? And if what was working could meet everybody's needs, it would already been done. But unfortunately, there's a community in an area where people are living where they haven't heard about Christ yet or have not heard the opportunity, given the current circumstances in churches that already exist. So something new needs to happen. And so we knew it's got to be different. Do something different. There was clarity given to us in knowing that, freedom in that, to do new things, to try new things. We couldn't provide certainty for our first team, and it was very frustrating for them. We couldn't provide them certainty, but we could provide them clarity. We knew we're not doing that, so we're going to try this. In times of turbulence, clarity is enough. It's the next best thing to certainty. Uncertainty will not be your undoing as a leader. However, your inability to be clear, to give clear directives in the midst of uncertainty will be your demise. So, be clear, even when you're not certain. Clarity is leadership. And people will follow you in spite of a few bad decisions as long as you're clear, as long as you're honest. As a father, I have to apologize to my 9-year-old often, right? And that's a tough thing to do because I'm in charge, right? But there's times where I have to go to my son and say, Daddy shouldn't have said that word. Or Daddy shouldn't have done that. And I tell him, I said, look, dads aren't perfect. We're human too. And what that does for my son is it gives him the freedom to go, I don't have to be perfect either. And so he's not encapsulated in this space, this pressure tube, thinking he has to get it right all the time until he bursts. He gets to go, Dad is not perfect, I'm not perfect, but the most important thing that he sees is that I'm clear about it, that I say, it wasn't right, but I'm here saying, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm owning it. It's clear that I'm owning my decisions, right? And I'm going to do better, and this is how I'm going to do better. Clarity helps him develop. So, people will follow you in spite of a few bad decisions. People will not follow you if you're unclear. Not because they don't want to, it's because they can't. If you can't clearly say how to follow you, how do you expect them to follow you? They can't. There's no way. There's not a next step. So what's the point? You got to be clear. I know y'all are hungry and y'all want to go, but I got one more story. It'll be real quick, I promise. And it's a familiar one, so it'll be really easy. After Jesus rose from the dead, there was a great deal of confusion because the early followers thought that Jesus was supposed to come and like set up a new kingdom and take over and take Caesar down, and they were going to be in charge, right? That's what they thought was going to happen. But then he let them kill him. And then he came back to life, and they're like, is it now? Is it now? Are we going to be in the kingdom now? Kind of thing. And he's like, no. This is going to be the situation. And so there was a lot of confusion. So his disciples were actually just straight up asking him, can you tell us what's next, please? I don't know. You've done exactly the opposite of what we always thought you were going to do. So can you please tell us what is next? Because of our place in the timeline, we understand how it would have been impossible for Jesus to describe what came next. It would have been impossible to tell them what was next. So instead, he gave them something to do. And they did it and were the result of it. So they moved forward in spite of the waves of life crashing around them, the uncertainty rocking them around. Their obedience did nothing to diminish the uncertainty. They were still uncertain, but they did change the world because of the clarity that they had. And this is the clarity that Jesus gave them. In Matthew 28:18, it said, then Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. In other words, it's more important for you to know what to do than it is for you to understand what's going to happen next. Yeah. Oh, and one more thing. I love this part. Remember? It echoes through. And one more thing, and it was the same case for Joshua. In verse 20, it says, and surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. And he was. And they did what Jesus said, and we're proof of it. Because we get to do this, because we get to call ourselves the church, is because of what they did. Not because they knew the future or had certainty, because of how they followed the clarity of Christ. And so, mom, dad, owner, manager, boss, coach, elected official, you can't provide certainty. So don't even try. Don't even try. What you can provide and must provide is clarity. Clarity is always the next best thing to certainty. So be clear even when you're not certain. So this week, and this is my challenge for you guys. This is my homework, okay? This week, in whatever setting it is, at home, at work, Zoom calls, look at what you say. How are you talking to people? What are the sentences that you're forming? What are you promising them? Are you giving certainty that you can't? Are you offering something that you can't really provide just to get through a moment? Really look at your words. Play back how you talk to people. See how many times you're giving certainty rather than clarity. And it might be more than you think. You might be surprised by it because humans crave it. They crave certainty. But that doesn't mean that you have to feed it to them or that you have to eat it. That's why people go nuts in churches. They do weird things, right? They go, I'm going to figure out this equation. I'm going to try to put God in a box. If I show up this many Sundays and I give this amount of money, and if I do communion this many times, I've earned my ticket into heaven. Some people, they won't admit it, but that's how they're living. Yeah. That if they just follow this formula, God's going to be happy with them. That's not how it works. They crave certainty. Provide clarity, even if it threatens your insecurities. Your insecurities are the things that are dinging in your head of when you want to provide something that you can't offer because you don't want them to think less of you. You don't want them to think that you're unprepared, that when you truly are. You don't want them to know how inadequate you feel in that position. How unsure you are of the future and how you not even sure that you can lead them through. You don't want to do that. That's your insecurity. But be clear in spite of your insecurities, because a leader that can take their own insecurities and baggage and put it aside for the betterment of the people around them is a leader worth following. That's the kind of leader that I want you to be. So do that this week. Really look at what you say and how you lead. Provide clarity rather than certainty. And so next week, we'll close out with part 4 of Take the Lead. Let's pray. Lord, thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you for Joshua. Thank you that his story has been recorded for us so that we can watch how he led in such an uncertain moment and that how he provided clarity, and it caused them to finally get their promised land. Lord, thank you for Jesus and the words that he said and reminding the first followers that he will always be with them. Thank you for always being with us. I hope and pray that we'd never forget that when we hit these times of uncertainty, that you will always be there. You've been there, and you will be there in our future. And Lord, in these moments that we have, these opportunities that arise to take the lead, I pray that we don't miss them, that you will have them as a blinking, shining light in front of us so that we can lead people, not just in their moment, but back to you and to your kingdom. Lord, bless Village Heights. Bless our leadership. Bless everybody that hears this message. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.